When Jack Miller saw bulldozers tearing through his wheat fields, he thought it was a nightmare. But it was real. His local HOA was building a runway across his private farmland. The audacity left him speechless. They claimed it was a community improvement project, yet no one had asked for it, least of all Jack. He stood at the edge of his property, fists clenched, watching months of work being destroyed. The HOA president, Karen Brooks, smiled smugly, waving a stack of papers that she claimed were permits. But Jack knew better. The HOA didn't own an inch of his land. What Karen didn't know, however, was that Jack wasn't just a farmer, he was the director of the Federal Aviation Administration. And if anyone knew the law about airstrips, it was him. Still, Jack decided to play it smart. He stayed silent, documenting every move. Karen thought she had total control, but she was about to learn what happens when you build a fake runway on federal property. The next morning, Jack watched as the HOA crew installed white markings and even a mock control tower. It was absurd, a private neighborhood pretending to own an airport. Karen strutted around with a clipboard, barking orders like a movie director. "This will raise everyone's property value," she shouted proudly. Jack quietly filmed her entire speech, making sure every detail was captured. Later that night, he reviewed the footage and emailed it to a contact at the FAA's legal department. The reply came within hours: "This is unauthorized airspace construction. Keep collecting evidence." Jack smiled, the trap was set. Meanwhile, the HOA continued their runway project, even forcing neighbors to contribute money. One family who refused got fined. The tension grew, and rumors spread fast. The HOA was planning to host a private jet landing to celebrate. Jack didn't stop them. He wanted them to go all in, because the bigger their act, the harder they'd fall. By week's end, the HOA had poured thousands of dollars into the fake runway. They even invited local news for a grand opening. Karen loved the attention, giving interviews about innovation and leadership. Jack stood in the background, unseen, recording every word. When a reporter asked if the FAA had approved the site, Karen laughed. "We don't need their permission. This is private property." That single statement was all Jack needed. He forwarded the full video to his federal office under the subject line, "Unauthorized Runway Construction, HOA Violation." Within 24 hours, an FAA investigation team was dispatched. Trucks, drones, and agents were on standby. But Jack wanted to be there, to see the look on Karen's face when she realized who she was dealing with. The morning of the ceremony, Jack put on his FAA badge for the first time outside work. Today, he wasn't just a quiet farmer. He was the law. As crowds gathered, Karen stood proudly on the runway, microphone in hand. "Welcome to the future of our community," she announced dramatically. Just then, a convoy of black SUVs rolled in. The crowd turned as uniformed FAA agents stepped out, followed by Jack, calm, confident, and holding official documents. Karen froze mid-sentence. "Jack! What's this?" she stammered. Jack handed her a notice: "Cease and desist order, federal airspace violation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You can't be serious," Karen blurted. Jack's voice stayed level. "You built an illegal runway on private land, Karen. And worse, you violated FAA airspace laws." Cameras clicked as agents began measuring the site. The HOA board tried to argue, but their permits were revealed to be fake. One agent whispered to Jack, "Sir, this is one of the most bizarre cases we've seen." Jack just smiled. "You haven't met Karen yet." The investigation spread like wildfire. News channels swarmed the area, calling it the HOA airport scandal. Karen hid from reporters, claiming she'd been misled. But the FAA had all the proof: signed HOA documents, fake contractor invoices, and emails showing the board's intent. Jack's farm was officially restored under federal protection. Still, he didn't seek revenge. Instead, he invited the neighbors over for a small meeting. Many apologized, admitting they were pressured into paying fees for the project. Jack assured them, "You're not the enemy, you were victims too." The following week, FAA officials released their public statement, unauthorized aviation construction led by a homeowner association. Now under legal review. Karen's leadership license was revoked, and the HOA's funds were seized for repayment. Jack stood at his window, watching the bulldozers return, this time to remove the runway for good. Months passed, and the farmland began to heal. The ground where the runway once lay was now green again. But Jack hadn't forgotten. He used his own savings to plant a memorial sign. This field once hosted arrogance. Now it grows honesty. The story made national headlines, and people across the country reached out to thank him. Some said it gave them courage to stand up against abusive HOAs. Karen eventually tried to move out quietly, but her name had become synonymous with the fake airport fiasco. One evening, as the sun set, a new neighbor walked over and said, "You taught this community more about respect than any HOA ever could." Jack just smiled. Sometimes, the best way to win is to let the truth land by itself. The man nodded, glancing at the now peaceful field. "You really are a pilot, not of planes, but of justice." A year later, Jack received a letter from the FAA's headquarters. They were naming an internal ethics award after him, the Jack Miller Integrity Medal. He chuckled softly, humbled by the irony. A man who just wanted peace had ended up rewriting HOA history. On a quiet morning, he stood where the runway used to be, coffee in hand, remembering the chaos that once filled the air. Now, only the wind moved. He thought about Karen, about how power, when misused, always comes full circle. Then he turned toward his barn, where his crops swayed gently in the light. Balance had returned. Before walking back inside, Jack placed a small sign near the gate, "Private property. Respect it." And that was his final statement, simple, powerful, and earned, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.